What's up, you guys? It's your boy T here checking in with another video. Today we got a video of the 5 mind-boggling space mysteries. Today we're going to react to it. Let's see what y'all think. Let's check it out.
A major discovery. They found water on the sunlit side of the moon. But some people believe they made other major discoveries there decades ago. Discoveries they chose to keep secret. Take a look. From 1969 to 1972, NASA's 6 Apollo moon landings defined a golden age in space exploration. The awesome imagery of those missions made history, but some people believe that this image reveals a secret history.
In my opinion, that is not a natural structure. It's got to be intelligent species that created it.
Oh, that's the first thing they go to. It just cannot be natural. It just cannot be. It cannot. It just cannot be natural. That's what they say. Man. Let's see what they talk about.
In the 1960s, Ken Johnston was a NASA test pilot, but later as director of the Data and Photo Control Department at the Johnson Space Flight Center. He says on one of the moon missions, the astronauts came back with intriguing photographs.
I was in kind of shock. And some of the craters would actually show domes and actual bases.
Bases on the moon? Ken's talking about these rounded dome-shaped objects in the middle of one of the craters. But what's even more shocking, Ken says when he asked his boss about the photos, he was told to stop asking.
And we argued a little bit. He finally said,
Excuse me, sir. I saw these things on the moon. Hey, you better be quiet. Boy.
I don't care what you do, just get rid of those pictures that were taken.
Is it a cover-up? One thing is certain. Ken's not the only person to believe there's been alien activity on the moon. Take a look at these photos. Some believe this looks like vehicle tracks. How did these things get there? Journalist Alexis Brooks says some believe they could be the work of an ancient interstellar civilization called the Anunnaki.
Their technology is said to be
There go that name again. Oh boy.
integral in the structures that we're familiar with today, like the pyramids. So the question becomes, did this ancient race lay footing, if you will, on the moon?
The Anunnaki first appeared in the ancient traditions of the Sumerians and the Babylonians over 3,000 years ago. Do these images suggest they or another civilization landed on the moon? We asked astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy to check it out. McCarthy starts by examining the photo of the alleged bases.
It really does look like something artificial at first glance.
McCarthy focuses not only on the structure, but on the crater around it.
When an impact happens, ejecta is flowing everywhere. Some of it is flowing straight up and comes straight back down. And it creates these irregular piles in the middle of the crater that you see here. Frankly, if it wasn't there, that would be weird.
Next, Mars mission planner Jonathan Hill takes a look at those strange tracks. Hill points out that boulders often leave similar tracks when they roll across the surface, but these tracks are perfectly parallel.
My first thought was the lunar rovers driven by the Apollo.
My first thought was, what is that?
The Apollo astronauts.
Hill checks images from Apollo landing sites and comes up empty.
The United States was not the only country that sent wheeled vehicles to the moon.
In fact, in 1970, the Soviet Lunokhod-1 was the first remote-controlled rover to land on an extraterrestrial body, and the width of its known tracks seemed to match the mystery photo.
They look very, very similar to those 2 parallel line tracks we saw before.
That's some, hey, something going on. Something going on. We don't know what. But something going on.
But we still can't quite prove definitively that's what caused these particular set of double tracks.
And the worst part about it is they can't even tell you what. We just don't know. We just don't know.
Well, we don't have proof that the Anunnaki ever made it to the moon. But we do know those moon bases aren't alien-made, while the mysterious tracks look like human handiwork. So our verdict? The bases are natural formations, and the tracks likely from a lunar rover. And here's hoping we get back to the moon soon to make some more. For decades, we've been sending probes to Mars, and ever since, strange images have been captured on the surface of the red planet. Could this be a floating spoon? Or this, a statue? What about this? The face of a god? But then, in the spring of 2020, things got really strange when an amateur astronomer claimed the cameras on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed this. Take a closer look. It appears to be a group of buildings and pyramids on Mars, one even in the shape of an eagle's head. George Haas is the director of the Esoteric Cydonia Institute. He believes this could be evidence of an ancient civilization on Mars.
The first structure to get my attention is this four-sided pyramid that has a conjoined mound at the top. These are large geoglyphic formations that show intelligent design, all kinds of formations that appears to be a city.
George also believes these Martian pyramids are eerily similar to the ancient Mayan pyramids in Mexico.
It looks a lot like the Pyramid of the Moon in Teotihuacan. You have a four-sided pyramid with this platform or porch that's jutted off the one end of the pyramid. And they're almost identical.
Forensic investigator Chase Klotsky says there's a case to be made for past life on Mars.
There is physical evidence, scientific evidence that there was once water on Mars. So if the water was there, it easily could have supported civilization.
So where did the Martians go? One popular theory, they were destroyed by nuclear war.
Whoa. They were destroyed by a nuclear war. That's crazy. So are they trying to say that we had water there at one time? So that means they had life there. So did it all end in war? Well, the end is always war. Oh, that's crazy.
The possible evidence? Atmospheric traces of an element called xenon-129.
Xenon-129 is a signature of artificial nuclear explosions.
A 1 megaton bomb can completely level a radius of nearly 4 miles. But before we mourn the annihilation of Martian civilization, let's determine if there was a civilization at all. We took these photos to the best in the field, Mars mission planner Jonathan Hill. Hill begins by examining the large eagle's head structure. Could that be by design?
We see cliff faces along the edge, nice gentle slopes that are consistent with ice deposits that we see on similar mesas throughout the planet.
Good boy.
Hill says those lines indicate a natural formation, and geological analysis of the area confirms it.
So using ground-penetrating radar from orbit, we can see down into different layers of these mesas to see what they're made out of. And the entire mesa...
We're going to pause this right here. Y'all let me get a clip art real quick. Clip that.
rock and water ice. And so that obviously rules out any artificial metals.
Told y'all seeing work in real time.
Or other materials.
But what about the nearby pyramid? George Haas claims it's a mirror image of the Pyramid of the Moon in Mexico. Were the two built by the same hands?
When you look at it, the difference between an actual pyramid is that all the angles are perfect. They were artificially engineered. When you look at a mesa like this, the edges aren't straight. They're all curves. The top is not centered. The geometry is just not there.
And that evidence of nuclear war on Mars? The xenon-129?
Xenon is a naturally occurring gas. We find traces of it in our atmosphere here on Earth, so it's not surprising that we find traces of it on Mars.
After years of studying the red planet and claims of amazing structures there, Hill believes there's a psychological explanation for what people think they are seeing on Mars, the phenomenon known as
One thing you do know, it's so much stuff going on, and we need to figure out what the deal is going on. I will say that.
pareidolia.
It's basically where the human brain goes a little too far and it implants patterns where patterns don't exist. And so I think people have to really prove to themselves that they're not being affected by this known effect.
So it's simply a trick of the eye. And turns out that sometimes we'll see things we want to see and not what's actually there. So our verdict? Pareidolia.
What y'all think? Y'all think it's a trick of the eyes, or you think it's something there? They trying to say nah, or maybe they get paid to say nah. Something going on. Something going on. Y'all want to tell us?
But don't let that stop you from looking up at the stars for that alien life. We may still find the...
Man, this dude right here could be an alien. I keep it a beam with you. He look like an AI to me. This whole scene right here look like an AI to me. If you really want to keep it a green, I'm looking at this dude's face. I'm like, hold up, man. Was this video made with Fantasia? Let me find out. Look at him, man. Look. Can y'all see this, man? Hold up, man. Y'all gotta see this, man. Yeah, look. And y'all tell me.
proof one day. March of 2017, the International Space Station, 250 miles above the Earth's surface. Two astronauts are on a routine spacewalk to perform maintenance. NASA flight engineer Peggy Whitson films their mission and, in the process, captures something out of this world. A strange object seems to be following. Look closer. It appears to be spinning slowly as if to get a better view. Visible in the background for almost
this game
for almost the entire 7-hour spacewalk. Social media blows up. Many speculate that this is proof of a UFO monitoring the ISS. Author and editor Brad Olson thinks there's an entire ET surveillance network. Some believe the centerpiece is a steering satellite called the Black Knight that avoids detection through a cloaking device.
The Black Knight satellite flies a very peculiar rotation around the Earth. From pole to pole. So as the Earth spins in that direction, eventually every continent will come underneath where this Black Knight satellite flies.
In 1899, famed inventor Nikola Tesla received a radio transmission some believe was from the Black Knight. And photos of a strange object like this one taken from the ISS add to the speculation that an alien satellite is orbiting Earth. But if there are aliens spying on us, no one knows exactly what they'd hope to learn.
What they're using it for to monitor the Earth is truly one of the greatest mysteries of our planet.
Now, other footage from the ISS has reinforced the idea that strange things are happening up in orbit. Check this picture out. It's from 2015 when a British astronaut's 3-line moving in formation near the ISS. Now, the image is tough to see, but let's zoom in and I will point out what we're talking about. It's right here, here, and again right here. Strange, right? But before we sound the alarm, let's analyze these images with our experts. Mark D'Antonio studies the spacewalk footage to see if the object could be some kind of satellite.
It actually falls into shadow of the space station a few points in the video. That is something that tells me that it's actually fairly small and fairly close to the space station.
So maybe it's one of the 130 million pieces of space junk circling the Earth. The ISS sometimes has to maneuver out of the way to avoid being hit by that stuff.
If it was space junk, we would kind of expect it to be moving across the surface of the Earth in a different direction. But because they're moving at the same speed through space, it kind of looks like it's something that's paralleling the motion of the International Space Station.
Mick West dismisses the Black Knight spy satellite theory for the same reason. It would follow a completely different orbit from the ISS. And after doing some investigating, D'Antonio thinks this UFO is from the ISS itself.
This particular object was a shield that was supposed to be installed, and they dropped it by accident.
The shield is made of 2-inch thick fabric that's meant to protect the ISS from strikes from space junk. As for those 3 streaks of light, D'Antonio researches that particular ISS mission and notes there was an interesting problem.
There was a leak of a liquid from the Russian sector of the International Space Station. In the final analysis, it turns out that this is almost definitely just urine that leaked out of the Russian sector of the International Space Station.
Our verdict? The UFOs were really a flyaway shield and some Russian urine. Yeah, I said it. But the space junk problem, that's real. In fact, NASA is worried about something called the Kessler syndrome, where so many objects will be in orbit that a collision could cause a whole cascade of smash-up, producing so much clutter, it would make future launches impossible. In October of 2020, a sharp-eyed investigator scanned satellite images of Antarctica and comes across a site that stops author Brad Olson in his digital tracks. It's a metallic-looking object half covered in ice, and Olson's sure he knows what it is.
There's a perfectly round saucer on Antarctica.
Look closer. It sure seems to be a raised disc casting a shadow onto the ice. Olson thinks that as the ice melts, an alien spacecraft has emerged from where it was left thousands of years ago. But what alien would park their ride in such a hostile place?
Antarctica and Mars are both extremely sterile environments. If I were a Martian and I wanted to choose a place on Earth to live, Antarctica, it'd be the closest thing to home I could find.
George Haas, chairman of the Sionia Institute, thinks Antarctica was much more than a Martian rest stop. He believes Earth and Mars were twin cradles of an interplanetary civilization. Contrary to mainstream science, he claims that this pyramid-like structure and this human face are not natural Martian formations.
I believe the structures that we're finding on Mars were either built by an indigenous Martian culture, or they possibly could have been done by us a long, long time ago.
Which brings us back to the saucer. Olson thinks it could be how the ancients commuted between the 2 planets.
Could it be that this is a shuttle to go back and forth to Mars with some of the presumed bases that exist on the red planet?
Antarctica was once on the equator, and plants and dinosaurs thrived there. It seems fantastic. But the fossil record proves it's true. And now some believe we're on the verge of a similar revelation about the continent's connection to Mars. The only way to separate fact from theory is to turn to our experts. Science writer and forensic video analyst Mick West takes a 3D look at Olson's downed UFO.
I tried orbiting around the image to see what it looks like from different angles. The perception of it kind of And now, instead of it looking like a disk, it kind of looks like a little lake of water. And I think what we're seeing here is an example of what's called the crater illusion. The human brain has evolved over millions of years into expecting that light comes from above. So our brains automatically interpret this image as being a raised up disk, and they interpret the other image from 180 degrees as being a depression.
West is certain about the crater illusion. But NASA's Bob Anderson is more open-minded about the strange formations on Mars. He thinks they were likely created by erosion and other natural causes. But he's keeping an open mind until we can inspect them in person.
What we should do is go study them. And I'll give you a perfect example on Mars. As we looked at imagery for a long time and said, well, Mars is a dead planet. It had no water. It had nothing. And now we know that Mars had an ocean that lasted early in the 4 billion year mark. And so the ideas and the hypotheses are constantly changing.
Our verdict? We think West is probably right that the saucer is an optical illusion. But just as Bob Anderson thinks the formations on Mars are worth investigating, George Haas says there should be an Antarctic expedition to examine the saucer-like shape. And on that, we can agree.
At an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
March 2021.
Heat shield set. Skycam maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars.
After a dramatic landing on Mars, NASA's Perseverance rover is looking for signs of ancient life, either primitive forms of bacteria or strands of DNA. To get its bearings, it takes a panorama of 4 images, and in the 3rd frame, it snaps this. A bizarre object appears suspended over the Martian surface. Zoom in, and it's clearly something thin and elongated, seemingly out of place. Just minutes after NASA downloads the image, social media lights up with posts about aliens and UFOs.
Zooming into the image, you can see its shape really closely resembles a bird in flight.
Let's not just take McCarthy's word for it. Here's a bird in flight on Earth. We pixelate it to the same degree as the Perseverance image, and we put it slightly out of focus. Practically a match, right? Percival Lowell, America's preeminent astronomer of the early 1900s, studied Mars with a telescope for 15 years. Lowell saw lines on the surface and grew convinced that they were irrigation canals to transport water from melting polar ice. He took this as evidence of intelligent life on the red planet. In the 1960s, the Mariner missions captured detailed images of the surface, and it turned out that Lowell's canals were actually a string of craters. But at least part of Lowell's theory has been proven true. In 2008, NASA's Phoenix Mars lander discovered ice under the Martian surface. So the possibility of life on Mars isn't out of the question. The Perseverance rover is the largest astrobiology expedition ever launched by NASA. Did it find proof of Martian life within weeks of touchdown? Let's check in with NASA geologist Bob Anderson. First, is this all a hoax?
You can tell that this is a real Martian image because the sky is not blue, it's yellow, which is exactly what you would see on the surface of Mars.
Dust particles in the Martian atmosphere are high in iron oxide, which absorbs blue light and creates a yellow sky. So what about an aircraft? Believe it or not, a helicopter named Ingenuity hitched a ride with Perseverance. It has successfully flown on Mars at least 11 times. So could Ingenuity be what's in the picture?
See the shape of it. It's a very distinct box with 4 legs from it, with the propellers that are turning. And you don't see any of those features in this object here.
Okay, so it's not Ingenuity, but Anderson does see a familiar shape in the picture.
If you take a look at this object in real close, it's more of an elliptical shape, and so it's very indicative of dust particles. Now, we've been studying on Mars with the microscope.
Winds on Mars can kick up dust storms so big we can see them on Earth, and the dust's red hue gives the planet its color. But Mars dust is electrostatic, which means it clings to everything it touches. So it likely would stick to the camera's sensor or lenses and appear on all 4 images, not just one. So Anderson has another theory.
It actually could be a foreign object from the rover itself. The rover has little blankets and things covered with gold foil protected from temperature, and sometimes in the wind and in the sand, those little pieces get worn off.
So, what we might be seeing is a flyaway piece of insulation or coating. It likely blew off just before the picture was taken, flew out a few feet, then dropped before the next frame. So, our verdict, we're going with Bob Anderson. It's not 100% clear, but the bird was likely a flyaway piece of the Perseverance. In 2026, SpaceX hopes to land humans on the red planet. So then we'll definitely be able to say there is life on Mars.